What is up, everybody? How are you doing on this week 8 of Village of the Damned season 2? It is Halloween season after all. You know, you got those horror movie marathons coming on. You guys know I obviously like that. I think this is the absolute best time of the year. We talked about that last week. It's going to be a deja vu kind of week because the betting public, all the zombies got to eat whatever they wanted. The damned, they had whatever they wanted brought to their front door. You want that Bills against the Titans. You wanted those Ravens Monday night to polish off a bunch of parlays. You have been eating. If you are a Dan, you go out your front door, you wave at your neighbors, you know a little bit about everything, but a lot about nothing, then you've had a great couple of weeks. And honestly, whereas I typically would kind of take jabs at you, I really am rooting for you, Dans, because I'm not standing behind Terry Benedict and rooting for the casino owners. I want you people to win. It's just that I know that in the long run, they're likely to screw you, and I'm trying to get you off of those. But if we're on a once-in-a-decade run where the Dans reign supreme, fill up those Amazon carts and check out while you can before they come to get it back. It's been a legendary run for the Dans. I don't know how it's been for the Daves because, you know, usually when one goes up, the other must come down. So how are you looking with some of your kind of, I know you go through a lot of the games game by game. If we were to look back at your picks from the last 2 weeks, I mean, if I had to make spread picks, I would have been waxed. How did you fare with all these favorites going off?
Yeah, last week sucked, man.
Yeah.
Last week was tough. I mean, there were a couple spots like, by the way, what's up, man? Happy to be here. Apparently people were accusing me of being drunk on the show last week. I couldn't believe it. Dude, I went back. I saw those comments. I went back and listened. I was like, wait a second, because you know me, I take this seriously. Whenever I come on anything, especially doing this with you, I take it seriously. And I'm like, shit, was I slurring my words or something? Maybe it was the slightly edgy joke to kick off the show. But I watched it. I was like,
I think it's being a father.
Fine.
It's being a father. Every once in a while, you're going to wake up with those Jeff Van Gundy eyes.
Possible.
And you had a Van Gundy day. That's all it was. A little tired.
Possible.
I got news for you. I used to sit this close when I was filming these things. I have permanent Sicilian bags under my eyes. You want to know how to reduce those?
Just sit back.
By sitting back here.
I got the bags too, man. That's from not sleeping. That's from not sleeping.
If we sit close enough, we will all be a Van Gundy. So,
yeah.
Jeff and Stan with a Dave and a Dan, episode 8.
Can I tell you a spot though? The spot you asked me, like, how did it go last week? There was one spot there where it's like I was happy being a Dan because I don't even think it was being a Dan, and it kind of feels the same way this week. Last week, you had the Buffalo Bills at 8.5-point favorites against that Tennessee team. It felt like it should have been 10 plus, and it did move up to like 9.5 and 10 in some spots, but not until later in the week. What about this Detroit Lions, Tennessee Titans game? Like this was 11 pretty much everywhere. Pinnacle's got it 11.5 now, but now DeAndre Hopkins is gone. They're a really bad football team. Detroit's at home. Have the books just not caught up to how bad Tennessee is yet? Or is it that they don't want to make this like a 13.5 would be the better number point game or something like that? Or am I missing something on the Titans that they're just going to magically become better than they are?
Well, I think traditionally they don't really have, and the books or line makers, they don't have such a recency bias. I'm not 100% sure, but I think earlier in the year, every time there was like over a touchdown favorite, the underdogs were covering.
Yep.
But yeah, if you look at the Village of the Damned weeks, then all of a sudden, who cares about 10 points? Who cares about 13 points? I would say in a traditional perspective, maybe this looks like a letdown spot. That's a big win. Those are back-to-back big wins for Detroit. One on the road at Dallas, and then another on the road against the undefeated Vikings.
Sure.
Are we really going to get their best punch, or are we going to get Mike Tyson against Buster Douglas?
I think that's the right way to look at it. Like if you're trying to decipher why something like why this line wouldn't be bigger, you know. But last week, Buffalo, they just routed them. This team, I guess what I'm saying is this Titans team is really bad.
Oh,
And
yeah.
there's not a whole lot Callahan can do about it right now. They got rid of Hopkins, no surprise. Tony Pollard's fine, but in no way is this guy a game changer. They can't even get Calvin Ridley the football at this point. Like this, they're paying this guy a shit ton of money for him to just do nothing. I mean, it's not good. And then defensively, so I don't know. I don't care if you buy into PFF player grades or not, but this is still eye opening. You know, L'Jarius Sneed among all qualified corners has the lowest coverage grade among, and by a mile, among every qualified corner in the league this year. A guy that they went out and got as a big acquisition, leaves Kansas City, and now he's got the low. So even somebody like L'Jarius Sneed in the secondary that was supposed to shore up what was a pass funnel defense last year, even he's been a colossal disappointment. I don't care if it's Will Levis, Mason Rudolph. I hear what you're saying. Could it be a letdown spot? Sure. But if it is, how does it happen?
I got to say to you, you made a great point last week, and I didn't heed your own advice. Sometimes when I watch it back,
Well, I was drunk.
well, sometimes drunk people, they say,
I'm
a drunk man's words are
Sober
an
man-
honest man's, a sober man's thoughts, something like that. You were talking about how if there's a number that I'm always looking for that's lower than what I think it should be, and the supporting statistics back that sniff, whether that's Jordan Addison last week or somebody like that, the supporting stats, it backed up that sniff. So if you do see a low total, but it happened to lose the previous week, do not get too discouraged.
Mm-hmm.
That's the best advice for that particular situation. That happens to be my favorite type of situation that I look for. Lower totals like Josh Palmer on Monday night, where you could maybe hit some alts. Where I didn't take your advice, where the supporting metrics were not there for Sam LaPorta. And I deserve every single dollar of that loss. I deserve every last dollar that I lost on that sniff. And the sickest part of it, I see Jameson Williams now gone.
I know. I know.
And I see LaPorta in the 30s. And I'm just, man, this one, that has me very conflicted because even
Smash
if it's just
Sam LaPorta this week, Andy. You got this. This has supporting data. All right, this is fun. I'm so glad you brought this up. This is fun because now the supporting data actually exists. When Jameson Williams was not on the field last year for myriad reasons, who was the number 2 in this offense in the passing game? It was Sam LaPorta. I know they're saying they want to get Allen Robinson more involved. Fine. But are we supposed to believe that Sam LaPorta is not capable anymore? No. That one factor, pulling Jameson Williams with a 2-game suspension, this guy figures ways to screw something up nonstop. It's crazy. But taking him off the field, what did you get LaPorta at last week? It was like 47 or 44 and a half, 43 and a half?
Oh, it was less than that. Yeah. It was
in the 40s.
Low 40s, yeah.
And now you've got it at 35, 34 and a half in some, like I'm not on ESPN.
Oh my God.
The under on 34 and a half on ESPN bet is minus 105. So like you don't even have standard juice on that. I think on principle, we have to bet the over on LaPorta this week.
I'm
on
doing
principle alone.
Thank God. If you would have said don't take it, I probably would have listened. I'm happy that I kind of have your blessing on that. Yeah, it's just so ridiculous. It's so ridiculous that if you're on DraftKings and you take like the 43 and a half, that's going to be like plus 135, plus 140. Yeah. So
I'd argue we don't have a choice.
We don't, right. Which is why maybe I'll look at a second one. That LaPorta total was created by circumstances that no longer exist. There's a team I'm looking at for this week that now has current circumstances that didn't previously exist. And the numbers affiliated with their skill players are from numbers that now currently don't exist. And I'm talking about potential Cleveland Browns skill players.
A little Jameis action.
I mean, I'm sorry. I think I want to go with my DeMario Douglas, Jalen Polk approach. Take 2 of them. Take the 2 guys who are more likely to be running intermediate and deeper routes, Tillman and Judy. Don't take the standard over. Tillman's is in the 30s. And then crank those alt overs. And my thought is with Jameis, one of these things is hitting. I believe they're playing the Ravens. Teams are moving the ball through the air on the Ravens. So, man, this could set up for a similar Demario Douglas, Jalen Polk situation. Alex, I think I sent you something about Tillman's route participation and how often he was targeted. All we're looking for is some sort of tip of the cap to see who's going to be utilized the most. So, I mean, apparently Tillman's getting some good work and some good usage in there. Elijah Moore, I'm not going to use because he's that clear underneath guy, that slot guy. So to me, this is between Judy and Tillman with Jameis chucking it downfield. Jameis starting. I don't know, man. I kind of like this as just a calculated alt sniff.
I think there could absolutely be something there. This tweet does nothing for me, but I think, well, because they had 3 different quarterbacks last game. So I would at least want to see the breakdown, because Watson still attempted 17 passes. He completed, I think, 15 of them. He was finally moving the football. I bet the Browns in that game. Eventually, I'm going to get that fucking team right. Eventually.
Like, I have nemesis like that as well in all sports.
It's, divisionals. They also, dude, they held Burrow to like they held the Bengals to 220 yards or something. So that defense at home is actually pretty good. I see where you're going with this. You're going with a quarterback. You're going with a quarterback who's the only quarterback to ever throw 30 touchdowns and 30 interceptions in a season. That's perfect. I'm serious. That's perfect.
I know.
Every time you throw a pick six, if you're Jameis, it just means that now you have to lean on the aerial attack even more than you did on the previous drive.
And how many touchdowns have the Ravens been scoring recently?
Exactly. Right. So exactly.
The whole second half could be passing.
Yeah. And listen, last week, because I was on over props and a bunch of stuff from Mike Evans. Fortunately, he at least got me that touchdown, but would have had a second touchdown and would have had another 24-yard reception, but he dropped it and popped his hammy, which is brutal. That team is, it's tough with the Godwin and Evans. They were still moving the ball. And I know it's a stat that I've mentioned a lot throughout, us doing this show and on all my videos over on the Odd Shopper channel. Shout out to you guys who have come and joined. I appreciate it. Get this. So if you look at 20-plus yard passing completions this year, there's some bad defenses, right? Like the Jags have allowed 30 of them. The Saints have allowed 24. I mean, just not good. The worst team, the team to allow the most 20-plus yard passing completions is the Ravens with 34 allowed. 34 allowed. They're on pace to double what they allowed, more than double what they allowed last year. That is their biggest Achilles heel. It's not just the pass defense, it's the deep balls. I'll take some shots on Jameis in the passing game. Why the hell not?
Looks like that. Looks like you just bought my Tillman alt over up from 50 to 70.
Yeah, maybe. But okay, who are the guys?
70 yards is more than double what his prop is. I'm telling you, you can make some stacks. Wait a minute. I'm starting to think, how is this not going to happen? Is Jameis going to have 100 yards? If he has 100 passing yards.
What? Hold on. Let me see what the deep attempts looked like last week. Now you've got me. You got me in the weeds here now. All right. So, no, who led the team in deep targets for Cleveland last week? None other than Cedric Tillman.
That's it. We're going 100+ and we're retiring after the week. That's what we're doing. It's as simple
as that. Is there 150 on him? Yeah. They won't even post something like that.
No, you're gonna have to go to the sports book that allowed you to bet on Lieutenant Dan's impending death. They'll give you the alt plus 150 on Tillman. And you got screwed a little bit with that injury. You weren't the only one. And I think it's a perfect time because now it's hit this inner circle. What's hit this inner circle? Another week of it's rigged. It is rigged. And This goes to some of the plays that we gave out, or should I say I went right back to Demario Douglas because I said, okay, he's not in the 30s, but low 40s for a guy who was being targeted as often as he was. Not worried about that at all. You hear nothing, you get yourself up on that, early for the early morning game. Dave's already been up for 6 hours at that point, but I'm just getting up. And I go, all right, what happened? So I woke up after the first drive and I see Douglas catch. I go, this is going to be a piece of cake. And then I see he's just not playing anymore. And then was it Rappaport puts out a tweet? Oh, by the way, something that we knew, everybody knew this. Demario Douglas is deathly sick and he shouldn't even be on the field. He's basically dead out there in the middle of the game.
Yep.
So that waxed all those Douglas picks, and that's a loss that could have been prevented. And they would tell you it's rigged. So I'm like, okay, let me survive that. Let me try to survive that and come through with some later ones. Then we went to that San Francisco game. I go, okay, Jordan Mason, he's coming back from this shoulder injury. I know that in games that San Fran wants to win, you see an increased usage of Debo out of the backfield. And with an injured running back, watch how many carries this guy gets. So his rushing yard total was 12 and a half or maybe 13 and a half, something like that. I was like, this is literally a piece of cake. Put that one in. Put the alt 19 and a half, solid plus money. Alt 25 and a half rushing, solid plus money. I go, he takes the field for like the first snap. Then the next shot of him, they have him with like an oxygen tank, hardly breathing. I go, so I used to do a segment called I'm Sick on my fantasy show that I used to do. Well, this is a case of it's rigged, plus I'm sick because they're sick. I had a sick, disgusting couple of picks over the weekend, and I managed to salvage a not too bad week by a couple solid Monday sniffs, but those ones stung. The It's Rigged crowd was going wild, and I went down with them all last week.
It's totally rigged.
Yeah, the pneumonia. I mean, the guy was hospitalized after the game. I had a rough week. I mean, I'm happy to put that one in the rearview mirror. I can tell you that much. And then it all kind of culminated with Monday night and J.K. Dobbins just stuffed.
Oh, yeah.
Like, nothing on Dobbins. I really liked him. For what it's worth, I'm going back to the well on Dobbins this week.
I saw him on the list. Yeah, a run defense that they can absolutely abuse. This is typically, by the way, why you'll never see me give high totals. It's just part of I try to avoid anything happening like that where, I don't know, Jordan Addison was way under in the beginning of the third quarter. He just caught like a 40-yard bomb.
Yeah.
Cleared the alts, I just, it gives me peace of mind knowing I'm never truly out of it. That Dobbins bet, it felt like we were out of it.
So, yes, but it's also no. On one hand, Dobbins, we bet it at 71 and a half and it closed at 80 and a half. So we got like significant value on the closing line. Look, it doesn't matter if it loses. I'm not one of those guys that's like, well, we kind of won the bet in spirit, like we won.
We got to come up with a good name for that. A lot of people do that. Yeah.
A lot of people do that. What I'm saying though, is it's not like we bet it at 71 and dropped to 61 and a half and we were just on the wrong side of it. No, we got it early and it didn't work. When you feel like you're out of it though, J.K. Dobbins has ripped off some massively long runs this year as well. So it was just as possible, but it didn't feel like it though. Like he was being met behind the line of scrimmage. So to your point, I get what you're saying, but you better believe I'm sitting there. I'm sitting on the couch right here. I'm like, just one, dude. Just break one off for me. That's it. Nope. Will Dissly, 29 targets in the game.
I didn't word that properly. You can get it all back in one play. What I meant to say was the way watching the game unfold, it just seemed like they weren't getting any positive runs for like chunks. That's what I meant. It felt discouraging.
Definitely.
Yeah. Whereas in a certain game, like if you would have saw Vidal come in and he just happened to get lucky and bust one for 15, and now the run game has some confidence.
Yeah.
Just nobody could run on them. So, which is so weird, right? When a bad run defense comes in and then all of a sudden has a good game.
It's so weird. The league doesn't make sense sometimes, Like if the Saints do that this week, do you know how many rushing yards the Saints have allowed over? Can just take a guess. Don't look anything up. How many rushing yards do you think the Saints have allowed? Not average, but total over the last 2 weeks.
Okay. So last week, it was definitely over 100. I think Javonte's such a slug he couldn't even get to 100. Bo Nix Francess. I'm going to say 352.
Okay, that's a lot. 502.
Who'd they play last week before?
The Bucks and Sean Tucker and steamrolled them. I mean, there are two teams that haven't allowed 500 rushing yards on the season yet. And Dobbins is at 75.5 right now. So forgive me and feel free to fade this. But yes, I will go back to the over and I will ladder J.K. Dobbins once again. If he doesn't get there for me this week, maybe I go back to the drawing board. But he's still the main guy in that backfield, and Gus Edwards is still on the IR.
You'll never have to mention his name again, even when he's off the IR. That guy was full dust. He's fully finished.
You might be right.
32 looked absolutely awful in the same games. Dobbins was ripping off huge runs. This guy could not get 3 yards.
And they tried to get him the ball too. It just didn't work.
Yeah. This is the last time you will hear me say this guy's name. I don't think I've ever said his name. We got unbelievably lucky. We didn't deserve the win, but we got the win on his backup last week. You will hear me say this name one time, only once, and then after this cupcake matchup, you'll never hear it again. And that is Javonte Williams, who I truly believe is in slug territory, but had a great game against the Saints. But more importantly, we talked about Audric Estime coming in, and we hit the over and we hit 25 but let me tell you something. This guy played in week 1 and had a fumble on like his second carry. This guy came in the not even mop-up duties, because there was like 10 minutes in the fourth quarter. Saints were up by 3 touchdowns, and they brought Javonte Williams back in for that entire series. Then on the final series with like 5 minutes left, they bring in Audric Estime, and he fumbles.
Yep.
So there is no chance in hell that Peyton is going to trust this guy with any significant work. And when you're talking about how many carries they're willing to pile on Javonte Williams, as was the case last week, only against about 4 teams are you going to see me get excited about any sort of over or alt overs. But the Carolina Panthers are one of them, especially with Andy Dalton not playing. So if we get one of those Bryce Young starts from earlier in the year, can he have this magic new confidence where he's slinging it around? But all we've seen from Bryce Young is, we're punting again immediately. And Peyton obviously is going to rack up those touches, as we've seen him do with Javonte Williams. Normally he gets nothing. Normally he gets a cloud of dust against any sort of decent defense. This is not a very good defense, or facets of this defense wear down as the game goes on. And I believe it opened at 60.5. I think it's up to 62.5. I saw before we started filming. That's something that against this defense, I mean, am I missing something here? Because I would have put it way over, considering.
I hear you. I'm with you. It's almost like suspiciously low, to the point where you're like, okay, what am I missing? I would much rather be on the rushing yards here than the receiving yards in the event that they don't need to use him in the passing game. But that's a low number. I was all like, what's Cortland Sutton's receiving yards? He's coming off a 0 target game where his only target didn't count because it was a pass interference call. What's Sutton what's he coming in at?
Man, Bo Nix, I don't know. Do we want to be trusting him like that?
No, I want to see 43.5. If I was gonna bet Sutton, I'd probably just bet like one on the alt 100 instead of trying to ladder it or even betting the standard, because he could go nothing or he just has that big game.
You know, the opposite of what we talked about for Tillman and what we've talked about so many times so far. It's the polar opposite of what I said about this guy, Andy Dalton's first week. I said, this number you're seeing, this wasn't prepared by Andy Dalton. This was made in the kitchen of Bryce Young, this awful total that you're seeing with Diontae Johnson. And we just kept nailing it. We brought it up on this show a couple times. Then we had to wave him goodbye, like as we often have to do with our low players who move on to bigger and better things. Now, he probably will have a number that Andy Dalton created. And if we're going back to Bryce Young, I'll look for an under if they released it. I'm not sure if they released the receiving totals for the receivers in that game, but that's just something to keep on your guys' radar. If they have a low total, or sorry, a high total for Diontae Johnson after, Bryce Young comes back, and go look at his stats with Bryce Young earlier in the year. So that's just something to keep on the radar.
I hear you. My guess is that they know too much about this. Like, what do you think it comes in at against? I don't know if Patrick Surtain's going to be back off the concussion, but
he is. I think he is.
Is he good? Okay, I wasn't sure if he got a practice in yesterday. If he did, then he should be fine. If that's the case, Riley Moss has been good. The white cornerback, you don't see that very often.
My line, they're going to do 53.5.
I was honestly thinking high 40s, but you
could be right. I think they're going to be scared to put that number 4 next to a guy who's had, pretty big weeks the last month of the year.
He also has that. I wonder how much that ankle injury is affecting him too.
Yeah, he played through a couple injuries I actually didn't track him this past week. Did he do anything?
I think he had 1 for 15.
Oh, that's not going to help this week's line.
No, I'm thinking high 4. I'm thinking 48.5. 48.5 is
that one catch week ain't helping anyone. Yeah, that will bring it. That will pull that thing down quite a bit. Show me those donkey charts again. We didn't talk about too many sides or anything like that.
Oh yeah, let's do it.
Any of those stick out to you, or any of those you want to take a look at and focus on, and we can talk about the game a little bit? Any that stood out to you while you were talking about your plays?
So
how about this one, Dan, where you're like, you know what? You want to be a Dan on that one?
Definitely.
You go right ahead. And then one where it's like, I know you guys have been feasting, but there's a needle in that Halloween candy. Oh, by the way, who are those people? Like you probably heard that as a kid, as I did.
Razor blades in the apples. Yeah.
Who's doing that and why? There isn't a payoff. The kid just takes this home and then eats a razor blade or something. And what you don't get a payoff. It's not like some sick guy in a demented movie where he's renting out his Airbnb, installs cameras in the showers, and he's getting to watch these people. He just puts these needles into things and sends people off with their Butterfingers.
Right.
I want to know how many times this actually happened, or if this is a true old wives' tale. I never heard of a real story. Yeah, my kid went to the hospital. Yeah, it's November 1st. He's in there. He got the needle in the Reese's. I never heard any of those.
Dude. Not to mention, you know where the real flaw in all of this is, and this is how I know it's not true.
Go ahead.
Any asshole that gives out an apple for Halloween, the kid's walking 15 feet down the street, turning around and throwing the apple at their house.
So I wasn't familiar with the apple one. I did hear.
Wait, you're not familiar with the razor blade in the apple?
I always said, Alex, we may have to bring you in for this one. That's not fair.
Bring him in. It's anyway. Okay. I'm curious if I'm the only
Alex, one. Have you heard about the razor blade in the apple or the needles in the candy?
I've heard about all of it. I've seen none of it, but I've heard about all of it.
Oh, you never got a razor blade in your apple?
Never got the razor blade in the apple thing.
But you've heard.
How do they?
Right?
Oh yeah.
How do they hand you the apple? How do they hand you an apple?
I have no idea.
Or do they have a basket and you pick it yourself?
Outside? But Dave, you're exactly right. I just chuck it at the house.
So here, okay, the AI overview on Google The idea of razor blades and apples is a famous Halloween urban legend. Famous, Andy. Famous urban legend. The story of razor blades began in the 1960s, replacing the myth of poisoned candy. The earliest reported case in Canada was 1968 when Toronto police found, they actually found razor blades in.
Oh, come on. You can't take one thing from Toronto. They were never true Halloweeners up there. All right.
Of course. I mean, no one's doing this.
Getting these needles. Can you imagine? It's like
they have like an assembly line.
You have to sneak them through the wrapping paper into the Three Musketeers. And then you just go, all right, we got another one. Like it's unbelievable. To me, I'll put people who dish out that cheap CVS candy corn right in that same bucket. Those people who cheap out and don't want to give the kids Nestle. Do you think a kid wants to go home and eat candy corn? Even if you are the rare enjoyer of candy corn. You want to know why it's not on the shelves on March 8th? Because it's garbage. That's why.
Candy corn stinks.
It's a joke.
There's a joke. It's horrible. There's a lot of really bad candies out there that kids get in the bucket. Like there's some bad. Just stick to the good chocolate stuff.
Of course.
Right?
The heavy hitters are always known. If you're doing a tour of the Hershey's factory, what do they got on the outside? If you're in Times Square, you see big M&Ms and Reese's and Snickers. How has Three Musketeers survived all these years?
Not that bad, but they're not.
I know. No, you're 100% right. It's like they took a Snickers and said, let's make this a little worse. Let's just make Snickers a little bit worse.
It's never like if you're dipping into your Halloween candy, the Three Musketeers is never your first one. But when you see a bunch of silver there at the end, a couple weeks later, towards the end of the bucket, you go, all right, I guess. You don't throw it out, right? Like you don't prefer it, but you don't throw it out. I'm going for the Kit Kat. I'm going for the Butterfinger. I love Butterfinger. Going for the Reese's cup. I mean, and then you have the people that do the large, the king size candy bars or the box of Reese's Pieces. Those are the real heroes of Halloween, right? Right?
Halloween heroes.
Yeah. The Halloween heroes.
They don't spare any expense.
They're the best.
The one thing I just wanted to add in quickly, we talked about the needles and the razors, which I just learned about today. Did you ever get the change from an old guy?
Wait, like he gives you pocket change for Halloween?
Alex, come back. Because I've seen this one with my own eyes. I've seen this one with my own eyes.
He just gives you a couple pennies and dimes.
Yeah, they put change in your bag. And it has to be a true grandparent. And now maybe. Okay, yes.
I have.
Yes.
I have.
So these are the guys that forgot it was Halloween until kids started knocking on their door and they go into the change drawer.
I believe they think the kids money was so valued for our grandparents' generations. It was so, most people I grew up with, their families or immigrants came here. So either their parents, grandparents, and they were always very frugal. So I think receiving pennies and nickels, the big spenders gave nickels. I think to them, they thought like this is better than the candy. Like they have money from us.
That's understandable, but it's got to be like if you're doing it today, it's got to at least be a quarter or like a pre-1967 quarter.
Do kids even know what money is? I really mean that. Do they know what denominations of change are? I know that sounds ridiculous. How often does a kid who's paying with, Apple Pay and PayPal, how often are they? Oh, wait, hold on. I do have 29 cents for a bazooka. How much are those? Remember that? It used to be 5 cents for the single piece of bazooka. Is that up to like 23 cents now?
It's got to be. All of that stuff is expensive.
Are there any other prices on players that are expensive? Because now we should probably go back to some of these games.
We should. Well, can I talk to you about this Jags game? Because we got a little sidetracked there. Tell me you don't always find these games kind of interesting where, like that Vikings game, we won't get into it since most people won't have shelf life on that conversation, but it's still applicable. You have 90% of tickets, and I saw like 87% of money on the Vikings, except that line was 3. So it's moving the opposite direction. You've got 89% on the Packers. That was 4.5 when I did the video yesterday. It said, I was like, I lean Jags here. 89% on the Packers. It's at 3.5 now.
I think they're coming, guys. They're coming.
Yeah.
They want all that money back. They want it all back. So in order to do that, what they're going to do is have a stack on one side, and having 70% isn't even enough. So they want to even push the spread further to get it to 80 and to get it to 90. And they're coming for that money. They want that. They want Village of the Damned Part 3 to be a redemption story. And you know where the Dans are going to end up. Let's see what happens with that. That's fascinating. It really is. I need somebody to give me a thorough explanation. How is it possible that everybody says, well, Vegas just wants 50% on one side and 50% on the other side, and they win on the VIG? Yet you'll see a line open, 90% of the money on one side, and then it shifts the other way. I've already shown you how Malik Neighbors and Devin Singletary couldn't move a line a half a point. So how is all this money? So you can't give me the Puka Nakua and Cooper Cup. Although I just made one of like those, wedding hashtag type of names between the two. But it makes no sense, and I need somebody from a sports book to explain to me how that can happen. If they're about getting 50 and 50, how does
they're not
making the line? Well, that's what I'm saying. So how?
No, I'm agreeing. I'm agreeing
with
you. I'm saying they're not. Like, if it's pretty evident at that point, right? Like, Ravens, 83% on the Ravens. That was 9.5. It's 8.5 now. The Texans were 6-point favorites. The Texans were 6-point favorites yesterday, 78 on them. They're 5-point favorites now. Yeah, a lot of times you look at that stuff and you go, oh, wait, this actually doesn't matter.
You want to know what, Dave? I think maybe there's the unaccessible market, the market that isn't people betting at MGM and people betting at DraftKings. I think they're not like the Megaladans, but they're like the megala bettors who do things in an old school fashion. A guy wearing a cowboy hat, calling up somebody, an owner of a casino, and putting in a $98,000 bet. And I think a bunch of those come in, and that's what's offsetting all this money or something. Yeah. Something like that has to, because it makes zero sense. The numbers don't add up. So I'm going with that Doyle Brunson, Texas guy, putting in a $2 million bet, which has to be nullified by every Dan and their mother out there.
This one might surprise you. Why don't we both give one that we like here that's on the list if you had to pick one? All right. I think right now the Dan bet is, for the reasons mentioned, is the Packers. The one I like the Broncos. It's a huge number, but this Carolina team is beyond bad at this point. They have nobody. The defense is terrible. The Broncos defense is excellent under Vance Joseph. The pass rush has been well above expectations. The secondary has far exceeded expectations, not even including Patrick Surtain, right? The run, everything about this team. And you know what? You could make the argument that Bo Nix is playing competent enough football as well. Now you have Bryce Young in there, a banged up Diontae Johnson in Denver. It's moved because Bryce Young is starting, but it's still inside 10 at some books. Pinnacle's got it at 10. You know what? Broncos are getting a lot of tickets. My assumption is a lot of the money. If there's one of these spots I like, because I'm not betting the Chiefs at 10-point favorites. It's going to be the Broncos here.
I'm going to go with the Packers. That's going to be my fade.
Yeah, you're Dan, right? Your Megaladan play. Or I'm sorry, that's the one that you see as a mega Dan.
I skipped. Yeah, I skipped. So Packers 3.5. It's the classic. I think they're going to go on the road, come down to a field goal at the end. Either they win or lose. When they show me 3.5, they make it relatively easy for me. Jackson, I understand. Somebody's just cursing at their screen. I understand Green Bay's a better team. I understand all that stuff. Jacksonville, they got to win. They come home. Maybe they could snake another win. I mean, Lawrence has been playing so much better. If they lose by 3, I win. I always like taking those when they're still there. So if it's 3.5, they could be the rat of the week on that little chart right there. And the Texans, who do they got?
Texans at home against the Colts.
And Anthony Richardson starting?
Mm-hmm.
All right, so I'll take the Texans. I just have zero faith in that guy.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's tough to back Anthony Richardson right now. It really is.
Oh, remind me who the Commanders have.
The Commanders are at home against the Chicago Bears, but Jaden Daniels might not play.
Okay. That reminded me of a play that I wanted to give. DeAndre Swift's usage. It's just crazy. It's crazy in these games recently. Like it's 18 carries, 19. He's getting so much work, and he's being very productive with that work. You're going to get no Jaden Daniels, and you have this weird taste in your mouth. No, but the offense was great regardless, you know? Like Mariota came in and he did well against an already beaten down Carolina team. If Marcus Mariota with a bad Washington team, don't forget what everybody thought this Washington team was. They're on cloud nine. They're raking up these wins, but I think things feel a whole lot different when you go up against a good defense, which is what Chicago has been, and you have Mariota. All of a sudden, if there's one or two series that don't start going well, you're talking about the Bears repeatedly getting that ball back, and you're talking about 1 million carries for DeAndre Swift, and his total is not in line with the type of work that he's been getting. If you want to put that total against the Jaden Daniels squad and say, okay, well, you know, they could be down early and then all of a sudden they're throwing all the time, that's how he's not going to get there. But if we're getting Mariota, the line on DeAndre Swift, if you can bring that one up, Alex, I think I sent that one to you. But that is significantly lower, in the 50s. It just doesn't make sense to me. Like, you're talking about a guy, some of his last couple of weeks, and I'm just going to make up these numbers, but I know they're not far off, like 97 and 78 and another 88. A lot of touches and a lot of yards. After that poor start, the entire offense has been moving more, and Swift has really been one of the primary beneficiaries of this offense. So Swift is another one where I'm looking for some ladders there.
They're finally figuring out how to use this guy. You know, it took a while, but they're getting there, and it's good to see. I mean, he's been very good. You saw the big performance in London, because they're coming off a bye week right now, but that big game against Jacksonville. Yeah, 3 straight really impressive games for Swift. No issues with that at all. Be interested in looking at his rushing plus receiving, too, to see where that is, because he's just a guy that's been on the field so much. Yeah. And when you're on the field as much as he is, sometimes I'm just like, all right, well, let me get exposure to the fact that he's just on the field.
Can I use that as the first leg of our Build a Dan parlay to give out to the Dans one leg at a time, the Christopher Walken? I think I'm going to go with the alt over on rushing for DeAndre Swift.
All right. Let's go to our boy. Let's go to Sam LaPorta. We have to, right? On principle. We have to. Also, when you were just talking there, I went and looked when you were going through the Swift play. Last season, LaPorta cleared his receiving prop. This one, 13 of 16 times. I'm not including week 17 where he got hurt. 13 of 16 times.
Over 40 and a half at plus 120.
Works for me.
Then number 3, this is where we're really going to try to make this thing a real parlay. We're going to go with Cedric Tillman.
You want to do it?
I don't mind. This one, I don't mind because it's so low. 50 plus probably has to be a solid price.
I like it, though. All right, give me J.K. Dobbins for me then.
This rat bastard. All right, over on J.K. Dobbins as...
I'm not going 100.
Oh, this guy's giving us the alt.
Oh, yeah. What, are you crazy? You just gave me an alt on Cedric Tillman, and you have the gall to say that me going 10 yards over the standard prop on Dobbins.
This isn't an alt measuring contest. All this is trying to get us to a point where if one of us gives a leg that can go way over, now our parlay has full pirate odds and we can slow the ship.
I want Dobbins over 90 and a half at plus 180.
This guy.
That's what I want.
So there you go. A massive same game parlay to end the week. Dave, as always, it's a pleasure. Happy Halloween. Halloween's, I don't even know what today is. I don't know what date it is, but I know Halloween's coming up. Do not give out candy corn on Halloween. Definitely don't put needles in the Reese's. Don't put blades in the apples. Don't hand out apples altogether. Go to the supermarket, especially if you win some of these bets. Get the good stuff. Give them the Butterfingers. Give them the Reese's. Give them the Nutrageous even. Give them the Kit Kat. Hershey's with almonds. Maybe regular Hershey's. Nestle Crunch. There are so many to choose from. Don't give out the garbage just because it saves you an extra shekel or two, especially if you're a sports bettor. In this world, you give, you get. And what could you give me? I don't know. A couple of clicks would be nice. How do you like that one, Dave? You would like that for some professionalism on the transitions? Give me a like, a comment, subscribe. We call that the Sports Bettors Fair Trade. Because if you guys just watch this and try to extract picks and then put the bets in, you think that has good vibes around it? Where we asked for a click and you didn't, and you tried to rob us of our Halloween candy sniffs? So do me a favor, like, comment, subscribe, click those notifications. I hate saying all this, but I have to. And go check out Dave's stuff. I know you've been doing that, but continue to do that. They're all great over there. They were always very cool to me. They continue to be that way. So support them over at Odd Shopper. Very much appreciated. And Dave, if there's anything else you want to say.
Yeah, look, if it comes down to you deciding between candy corn and the candy needles, go with the needles.
Happy Halloween.